Is it working? Aha!
It is working.
Take that, computer. We are live! And we have 2 people.
It's okay. So we can start by kind of talking about, I know it's Sex Trafficking Awareness Month, which is not why we decided to do this. Jason's been hounding me for about a month or so or longer to come on and do this.
Yeah.
But basically we wanted to start by saying just a little bit about what we do with the rescue ministry and how we do it. And you guys can, the purpose of doing live is so that you guys can ask questions to us and we can do a Q&A. But I have done sex trafficking rescue for over 20 years in Memphis, and Jason's done it with me for maybe 5-ish, something like that. And so I'm a survivor of sex trafficking in Memphis when I was a teenager. And what we have found now, the culture, for lack of a better word, in trafficking is so much darker and so much more all-encompassing, and there's a lot of such a deeper level of mind control going on than it was when I was in it. I really feel so very, very blessed to have been able to get out of it as easily as I did. As a matter of fact, when I tell my story to girls now, and when we have victims and I'm talking to them, they actually stop believing my story when they ask me, how did you get out? And I say that because the guy who trafficked me, he had a cap that 16 years old was too old, and he just had no use for you after 16. And so he basically just cut me loose. And at that point, no one will believe that my story at that point, the girls who are trapped at this point. But so let's see. We're doing well. I'm trying to watch we haven't done a live like this before, so I'm trying to watch for questions and talk at the same time. We're doing good. How are y'all? So, but I guess we can, I don't know, maybe, Jason, you can, what were some of because your people had questions, and I don't know what some of their questions were. So. Well,
I was going to kind of do this freelance style and let them ask and kind of put you on the spot with it.
Well, I know
one of the biggest things they were wondering was signs to look for trafficking victims.
Okay. Some seem to be pretty obvious, as far as like a girl who is, if there's a big age difference, or couples that look kind of out of, like they don't really belong together. Like an older man and a much younger girl, a man who is always answering for a girl, talking for her, or sometimes it can be a young boy. The boys are more difficult to access. So what you usually encounter out in the street, so to speak, in public, is going to be teenage girls, and also, girls that are just in their young 20s, older, young, usually the adolescent females is usually what you'll encounter out in the public. So girls that are obviously being controlled, don't speak for themselves, don't say a whole lot. You can kind of tell if there's something off with, as far as that goes. It's always hard for me to answer those questions because things that seem obvious to me are not necessarily obvious to other people.
Tattoos.
Oh, thank you. Tattoos. Yeah, tattoos are big. The girls are branded by who owns them. And it's sometimes the tattoos lately, I've seen more facial tattoos. than we used to. Used to see more shoulders, run here, some still on the back. Tattoos can be anywhere, but a lot wrist. A lot of times they're basically, it's a brand of who owns them, and it'll be usually a street name and not an actual name. But also the different gangs, if it's a gang related, not all of them are. But if it's gang related, they'll have different gang signs and stuff. That'll be, the Bloods, the Crips, the Gangster Disciples. They have their different tattoos and different, like the Bloods have a crown. And there's numbers 13 for, is one that you see a lot with some Hispanic gangs and that kind of thing. So you see if you see gang, signs and that kind of thing, you can Google that, it's like some of the latest, gang signs and that kind of thing, and tattoos. Sometimes now if you get into some of the more darker type of trafficking, which actually we see a whole lot of, more than I starting out, when I first started to learn about the satanic ritual abuse aspect of it, I did not realize how prevalent it was. I knew, it's like, I thought, well, and this is, I don't know, 10 or 15 years ago when I first started learning about that, and I'm thinking, well, this will be good to know just in case we come across it. And boy, we come across it all the time. So butterflies are a lot of times signify the type of programming that a girl is under. Sparrows. Excuse me. Excuse me. Butterflies will symbolize monarch mind control. Sparrows can signify different types of programming. Sometimes Alice in Wonderland tattoos can be Alice in Wonderland programming. And that will basically signify other handlers of the type of programming that this girl has. And it can sometimes be, give them an idea of what their psychology inside their inner world looks like. The structure of how their mind control works, and sometimes some triggers and trigger phrases and that kind of thing. There's usually with the satanic mind control programming, they'll have a structure that you can basically diagram for how the alternate personalities are actually structured and layered. That may, and that's a whole other long, it would take us an hour to explain that, but just as a surface level answer, those kind of things can signify to other handlers and other people that will be kind of in the know what kind of programming the girl is under. And believe it or not, that it's actually very, very, very common. Those things sound so crazy and out there and fringe that you think that it's got to be rare if ever that you see it, and you'd be surprised. You see it like all the time, every day, and I've gotten to where, and butterflies are beautiful. People can get butterfly tattoos and it not mean you're under mind control programming, but I have
in the world of trafficking, that's usually not the case.
A lot of times it's not the case. And I've always tried to make myself, not jump to that conclusion. Like, okay, just because there's a lot of butterflies does not mean that this girl is under, and almost every time it's turned out to be the case. I mean, so, but that is it. Let's see if you can see, do they tattoo really?
What's the best way for us to handle a situation if you find someone who's been trafficked? Then, many involved in law enforcement are corrupt.
Yes, many
extremely corrupt.
Yes,
that's the reason why I don't do law enforcement.
Okay, so one at a time. What's the best thing to do if you find someone who has been trafficked? My suggestion would be to twofold, and it kind of depends on the different. They're unique situations, right? Every story is unique. But if you had let's keep it simple. So if you have a hotline number, which is, the human trafficking hotline number, it's 1-800 something, and y'all forgive me for not knowing it off the top of my head, but you can Google that too. There's like a national number. If you had nothing but that, you could talk. If you have a way to communicate with the person, you could always, suggest to them Here's a number if you want to, if you want to use it, memorize it. I have suggested to girls before, if they were resistant, a lot of times they are resistant to being rescued, because it's rescue looks a lot different than people thinks that it looks. It's not, you don't just run in there and open the door and they're so grateful that you finally came to their rescue and you grab them and you run out.
Yeah, this isn't Taken.
It doesn't happen that way at all. I mean, they're truly under mind control, and they are defensive of usually their handler. They're what's called trauma bonded, and so it's a process, and they don't trust people right away, and it's a process of gaining their trust. So there's a relationship that has to be built. So if I'm assuming with this question, I'm assuming that it's somebody that you're meeting, like let's say in a nail salon or in any salon. So you really think this person could be, being trafficked. You can always, somehow or another communicate to them a rescue number, and or a safe house in your area. There's many of them, and so you can look for I have a list that are in my area, and you can offer it to them. But don't say the word when you're in front of them. There's trigger words that you don't want to use. Okay, you don't want to say the word sex trafficked to a victim. Not when you're encountering them in public. Okay, there's trigger words they will resist, and they'll ghost. You know what I'm saying? They'll run from it because they will be in trouble for it. So you don't want to use the word sex trafficked, human trafficking, prostitute, pimp. There's those kinds of things that are kind of, if you can imagine something that if you had a police officer that was sitting there with you, if you can kind of imagine that scenario, those kinds of inflammatory language, don't use that when you're talking to them. Just say, because they're not going to usually admit that to you anyway. A lot of times they'll say, this is my boyfriend, or he's just my friend, or whatever. And it's like, okay, and you just kind of leave it be. If the man is there, general street rules, a lot of people don't understand or have never encountered like street rules. General street rules, you don't, you kind of acknowledge he's there, but don't look him in the eyes. You just kind of, you focus on the victim you're talking to, because they will assume if you're looking them if you like make a point to look at them in the face, that you are trying to identify who they are. So
they'll take it as a challenge.
Right. And so you just basically the street etiquette is minding your own business, keeping your head low and minding your own business. And so if you're now when I'm talking to girls, generally I'm just like the church lady, who's coming around and giving them gifts and giving them, stuff like that. And so that's kind of my cover, so to speak. I mean, it's the truth, but that's at the same time, it's kind of my cover.
But given the recent changes and the way that they're doing things, we've even had to use caution with that approach now.
Yeah, true. So I hope that I'm trying to make it these simple answers and not like too. It depends on your level of like, is your purpose, are you out on the street to encounter and build relationships and rescue girls, or you just happen to come across somebody that you think is being sex trafficked? I have actually told a girl before, you need to memorize this number, which was the hotline number. I don't know if somebody wants to, thank you. Somebody put it up there. Thank you, Paula. So if you have them memorize that number, and I think that there might be it translates to a word. I'm not sure. I think it does. That might be easier for them to remember. But I have told a girl before, I said, memorize this number. So do me a favor and memorize it, because when you figure out that you need it, you won't have your phone. And that usually will, it'll perk their ears up and just enough to do it. I mean, they'll kind of in the back of their mind, they'll do it. And they have, most of them have photographic memory, so they'll remember it. They'll also remember your credit card. So
Show that.
That's just that's your brain's natural response to trauma, which is why they have photographic memory. They're in a constant state of trauma. So if you're, that's why if you if they see your credit card number, if they see you punch in a PIN number or something like that, they'll know it. And they're trained to know it, and they can con you. But if you have an idea of the kind of duress that they're under when they go home to daddy, in order to bring money home, if you were as one day in their shoes, I guarantee you'd be doing the exact same thing. Anything, they're so desperate to bring home their quota every day so that they don't get tortured when they get back. They're desperate to do it. So they'll do anything. They'll steal, they'll con, they'll do anything to come back with the quota of what they're supposed to have. And if you walked in their shoes for 24 hours, you'd be doing the same thing. So it's a matter of being wise and understanding that, it's like this is how they're going to do it, but also having compassion and knowing why. So you have to be smart and kind of, handle yourself and make sure you don't get, your purse stolen or something like that. But at the same time, just have compassion for why. I don't know if you want to look at these questions, but do a lot of street people.
Smaller towns, so it's in the shadows. Yeah. Son had a friend addicted who got arrested for kidnapping 3 girls. Yeah, that's more common than what people think. And with crime being on the rise as it is, criminals are taking notice and they're taking full advantage of it. Just in my job, one of the posts that I've been working, the crime rate shot up so much that we're going to have 2 or 3 guards at this one location just to make a dent on them breaking into people's cars and stealing them. We had someone got assaulted on the property the other day. So crime is on the increase, and you're going to see with normal crimes being on the increase, the cops would be too busy to focus on anything else, be it murders, sex trafficking, things like that. So the hardened criminals and the Satanists are going to take full advantage of it.
And small towns are big in trafficking, and people don't realize that. They think that rural areas are somehow in a bubble, and they're not. I mean, anybody, if you think about it, especially nowadays,
small towns are ideal.
Yeah, especially with like all of the stuff online, Pornhub, and all of the different computer stuff that can be done now. Yeah, there's no place immune for sure.
Exactly. And these like live streaming sites like Chatterbait and stuff like that, they capitalize on trafficking women. You go on one of those places, I can't tell you how many different accounts MS-13 or the Vice Lords or the Crips or the Bloods have on there where they're showcasing one of their girls. Mm-hmm. And they're pulling in all kinds of money from it because it's live. And there's no laws or restrictions that are preventing any of this stuff from happening.
Yeah. So someone asked, do they tattoo really young girls or boys? No, usually not.
Usually if they're marked, it'll be with a brand. Mm-hmm. With an actual fire brand. They'll be burned.
You hate to say it this way because it's so grotesque, but part of the appeal of the pedophilia for pedophiles is the fact that they're untouched and they're, unmarked.
Exactly. So, if there's going to be marks, the pedophile wants to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Because they're that sick and twisted. They're that demonic.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Some of the other things that people generally ask me about the trafficking stuff. What would some of the other questions be? I feel like I know that a lot of this is probably new to a lot of people, and at the same time, I feel like I have said these things over and over. So you'd have to forgive me if I repeat myself. Sorry. Let's see. Look at you guys. Thank you. And but it is truck stops are big.
Truck stops are a haven. Cheap rundown motels.
Right. it's the same. It's generally the same people who deal in drug running. Um, the people who've been dealing in drugs for years started making a lot more money with selling people. And so now they're doing both, and basically they use the girls to be mules, to be drug mules. And so the girls a lot of times will be doing both. They'll be what they call serving.
Hmm.
So they serve, meaning that they will provide drugs and or sex services at the same time.
I think the last estimates, official estimates, was human trafficking in America is somewhere around 240 billion annually, and that's just what they know about.
Yeah, it's really untold. It is the most sick and most all in all encompassing form of slavery that we've ever seen in the world. Um, it These girls are trapped 20 different ways. They can be healed. They really can get out, and they really can be healed, but it takes the Lord. It takes the Lord's help.
Becky, if you're that close to the border, then depending upon your area, you're not going to see them on the streets. They won't be put on the strip, so to speak, depending on the location. It'll all be done online via chat sites and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Real close to Mexico. What you'll see when you get further down in Texas and close to Mexico is that the children are generally being brought up from Mexico and sold in cantinas. And they'll be sold out of the backs of cantinas, and not they have the back rooms, the basements, the places, and it's very, very difficult to access them because it's kind of a sort of, in a way, I'm not trying to make a comparison to say it's the same thing. It's not, but sort of like how a secret society goes through levels. In order to get to those kids, you have to build the trust of the trafficker. So you have to be compromised at different levels to get to that place. So that's why nobody with any scruples can get back to where the kids are, because they're not willing to compromise here, and here to be able to do that.
Exactly. There's only two ways to catch them that close to the border. One is to be in with MS-13 and the cartels, to the extent that you know where they're selling the kids at. The other is to be lucky enough to catch them before they jump the border. And to do that, you have to know the coyotes, you have to know their maps, what routes they're taking, and alternatives and things like that. And unfortunately, there's so many rules and restrictions the U.S. government has, because they have to protect their own business aspects in it, that the only way you can do it is to go outside the law.
I would love to see more work done for those kids that are coming up and over the border, but the corruption is so deep. This is what the rescue work. This is what we run into all the time. It's hard to you hit a ceiling because of the corruption. You can't get there. There are very good cops, and there's good people in the FBI and in the TBI here who really are working to make a difference. But there's corruption also, so you can only get to a certain point. Truck stops here in the big small towns. Yeah.
Oh yeah, just like the truck stops in Jackson, Tennessee, are just riddled with it.
Yes. Yeah. The truck stops, they make a lot of money with the truck stops, because they'll buy both. They'll buy sex and drugs. And they're on the road all the time.
And most of the truck stop owners, the managers and stuff, a lot of the times they're on the take, just like the people that own the motels and stuff are. So any extra money they get offered, they'll take it just to turn a blind eye and look the other way. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the world's full of worthless douchebags like that.
So I'll just kind of go into a couple of things that we have seen, and maybe that'll inspire some, I guess, more questions. One of the things that the way we basically do it here is that we have done it, and of course it's evolving as the world changes with the lawlessness and COVID and all of the stuff going on. But basically, we have females on a team who will answer escort ads, and we are very upfront and open about who we are and what we're doing. But we don't go in there and say, "Hey, we're here to rescue you." What we do is we go in and offer gifts. It's like we have,
Supplies,
yeah,
vitamins, things that the
vitamins,
girls don't get.
right. Some of them have kids and they need diapers. Those are the common things that I've been asked a lot is diapers, formula, stuff like that. Makeup, things that I personally like to put in things that are not too cheapy because I want them to feel like they're worth something. That's just me. It's like as a,
That's a good way to be, though.
right.
But if you go too expensive, on the other hand, then the pimp's automatically going to smell something,
Yeah.
and he's going to grow suspicious right off the bat. So you kind of want to middle the road things.
Yeah, a good middle of the road. Yeah, that's a good point. But we always put some sort of either Bible or a devotional. A lot of the girls will tell me that they don't understand Bibles. It's like it's kind of over their head. They're not churched and that kind of thing. So we've done both. Sometimes devotional seem to go over a little better with something that they can understand a little better. But we'll do both in these little bags. And so I had a girl, we had given her a little New Testament that was one of those little tiny ones, a little pocket one. And she told me later on that because she was forced to dance, and she didn't want to. A lot of them are forced to do things like that they don't want to do. She did not want to dance, and she's been sold her entire life, so she's used to that. But to being sold, used to it being in quotation marks. But she was actually just self-conscious about how she looked and didn't want to dance. I mean, but this particular club was so dark and so satanic.
Talking about the orchid.
Yeah. And she told me that she talked about the dungeon room that was in the basement, and where they would do like S&M and stuff like that. And she said, Miss Jana, she said, I'm telling you, she said, she said, the screams and the sounds that I hear from this, she said, it's not normal. And she was always in fear of when it would be her turn, whenever they felt like it, when it would be her turn to be tortured in the dungeon. And she was so afraid of being forced to dance there, which was a punishment, basically. These girls, if they get out of line, or if they get, they back talk, or for whatever reason,
they'll be punished.
They'll be punished one way or another.
Severe.
And so they'll either they don't like walking the track, which is basically walking the street, and they don't like being made to dance at these really seedy bars because they're dangerous. And so she actually was able somehow or another to put this tiny little New Testament Bible we'd given her in her little bra she had, and she kept it in there while she danced in this club. And I found that fascinating and inspiring at the same time. And it made me, I was glad that she had it. I was glad that, it gave her some level of comfort to know that she had it. She felt protected a little bit if she kept this New Testament, close to her while she was in real danger at this place. Let's see. Well, okay. They'll not get in trouble.
That depends on the situation.
Sometimes they will not. Thank you for getting me back on track of the line of questioning. But you have to know a couple of things. One is that the trafficker will see all communication. So they will, a lot of times they're the ones answering you. So you have to just go in knowing that. A lot of times the escort ads and stuff are being fielded by the traffickers and not by the actual woman or the girl or whoever. So you just kind of know, say, hey, I go by, we go by kind of a surname. It's nothing on paper here in Memphis. But I'll tell them, hey, this is Janice. I'm with the Memphis Mission, and we're in the area. and we had, we're in the area tonight, and I've got these things. Are you interested in any of this stuff? And I can meet up with you or whatever. And so you meet them in public. If they say yes, and sometimes usually the girls that you're able to meet this way, they are being given a privilege on good behavior. So these girls that you'll be able to meet like this are under 100% submission. So you have to go in with realistic expectations and know that this girl is being good. She's been good for a while. She's 100% in submission to her handler. And so this is a foot in the door, and you're building a relationship, but you're most likely not going to meet somebody and say, hey, I can help you get out, let's go, and they're going to all jump on it.
Well, let me interject, because you have to build trust, and it takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to interject something real quick, because there are men as well as women in this chat. If you're a man, that is not going to be your job. Anytime that a man shows up, I don't care if you have supplies to give out or whatnot, they're automatically going to view you as a John or a potential threat. Mm-hmm. That's the way that it goes. So it has to be a woman that actually makes the initial greeting and actually carries on the relationship. Guys, your job is strictly resorting to backup. Mm-hmm. You are security, and you are to be in a separate car where they cannot see you, yet you are close enough to intercede if need be.
Separate car meaning, okay? You have to know that, like here in Memphis, a lot of times where we find these girls at is in hotels. Not all the time, but a lot of times. So the hotels will be usually they have some sort of deal going on with the front desk, so that you have to know that the front desk is being paid. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're basically on staff for these traffickers. They're being paid. If
it's gang tied, then there's going to be a squad of their hitters that are going to be somewhere in that facility, usually on the top floor, and they're going to have lookouts.
Right. And so if you, so you have to know that they know these cars going up and down, and they'll know you're there basically. And it's not one of those things that you have to try to like hide in the bushes and never be seen. You just have to kind of play cool, if that makes it, if that makes sense, is you just sort of be casual. And but there's been a couple of times, and one in particular I'm thinking of, where someone was following me in a car. It wasn't him, but it was someone following me in a car, and I asked them to not follow me past a certain point.
Easy.
I'm gonna call him out. Anyway, but he got distracted. He got distracted and followed me too close, or too far. And he turned around and went back, but the front desk and the lookouts, they all, they saw that I was being followed, basically. So there was a girl in my car, and her phone lit up, and it's like, that's their security, and they start threatening her immediately, telling her that they had eyes on her, a woman she calls her mother, who is not her mom. It's somebody that, it was like a social worker in East Tennessee that she called her mother, and her younger sister. And they started telling her what they were wearing at that very moment, basically threatening her if she didn't come back, that they were going to go after her mother and her sister. Now, whether or not they were bluffing or they meant it, I don't know. But I have seen them be able to do things like that, and this girl had seen them be able to do things like that. So it could have been serious. I don't know if they were bluffing or not, but it was enough to scare her. It was enough to scare her into submission. So there's been a couple of times, I'll tell you a couple of things that I have done wrong. Maybe that'll help with some of the.
So there's a reason our organization has rules in place that you do not go outside the lines of.
So there is one thing that I did wrong. So here's some examples of what not to do. And this was me breaking my own rules. Because it was just my mother's heart. It was just hard from, I knew I was breaking the rules, and I just did this time. It was a judgment call. But this particular girl was sick. And she was sick, and she had asked for stuff like Tylenol and chicken soup and that kind of thing. So, and I had met her once or twice before, and I was developing a relationship with her. And so she asked me, her room in this hotel was on the third floor. And I know in this particular place, I knew that the shooters and their security was up there on the top level. And there was no, basically, if I go in the place, up the elevator into her room, I'm trapped. But she was sick, and I thought, well, basically, I went in and I brought her Tylenol and chicken soup and that kind of thing. And it just so happened that day we just had this great conversation struck up between the two of us. And she started admitting to me things that these girls never ever say. They never say the word pimp. They never say, he's controlling my money, those kind of things. She started telling me these kind of things, and this particular girl spoke 8 languages and had no recall of how she had learned them. Okay, so this is one of the big flags of mind control, of satanic mind control. And she also described different altar personalities, and like a cat altar and that kind of thing. And so because she was just there and we were having this conversation going back and forth, I was there, and the guy that was with me at the time, we were in the room just basically too long. Usually you can get by with stuff if you just don't linger too long. But I was there too long, and before long, here comes this guy at the door, and she panics, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh!" And she was like,
one of their top assassins.
Yeah, it was their shooter. So she was in a panic, and she turned to me and she said, "You're my aunt, and you're just here bringing me food." And I was like, "Okay." And trust me, this girl, I'm 5 feet tall, and this girl was like a almost 6 foot tall Hispanic girl, and I did not look like her aunt, but I'm going with it, right? It's like okay. And so she opens the door, and so this guy comes in, and we just sort of slip out as he's coming in. Remember that I wasn't trying to look at him in the face. I just, we just kind of nod, tell her goodbye. We kind of nod and slip out. And so we escape. But here's what happened is that one of the other girls told me later, a couple weeks later, they made such a big example of her. They beat her so badly that I, to this day, don't know if she lived or not. And she had told me, and that was, so, people ask me a lot if I am ever scared. And I was a little nervous that night, honestly, because I realized we had kind of, made a faux pas. But it's not me who is in danger. It's those girls who are in danger. So my rules of trying to keep us safe are more about keeping them safe, because they're, they don't mind killing me, but they'd rather not have that it would be too big of a hurdle for them. There's going to be people looking for me.
It's one of those things, even with the type of training and stuff that I've been put through and the abilities that I have, that's not something that you want to engage in for 2 reasons. One, the one you're ministering to is the one that's going to pay the ultimate price. There's been times where I knew that the person we were ministering to was in there getting beat within an inch of their life, and I couldn't act. Because if I did, law enforcement isn't going to take my side. They're going to take the side of the pimp. They're going to take the side of the gangs, because that's where their extra money's coming from. As bad as I had to say that, I long for the day that those laws don't apply and the system's corrupted to the extent that I can hunt at will, but until such a time as that comes, we have to operate within the realms of the law to the best of our ability, which doesn't provide for us very much wiggle room at all.
But I will say this, though, because I totally, whenever you have the Lord, if you have a good relationship with Jesus, miracles, he can do what we can't. He can do what the police can't. And he can do what, so even though there's all these, the corruption can be so deep in some places where it can feel impossible, nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible. So I want to follow that, because it can seem like, good grief, there's no way to get these girls out, but there really is. It can happen. And we've seen the Lord do just amazing, miraculous things. And I'll be and I'll tell you how I actually view these relationships. This is Chief. He's a baby. He's a huge baby. But how I actually view these relationships and these encounters, I look at it differently than a lot of people think of rescue. If these girls are saved and their soul, their eternal salvation is secure, that's a win, you know? That is a win. And so that's my main thing is ministering to them and teaching them how to pray, teaching them about the Lord. And they're easy to minister to. These are some of the easiest, absolute easiest people to minister to.
Because they're hungry for it. They've lived nothing but pain and suffering.
Yes.
I said there are organizations out there that I won't name simply because I don't want to deal with the flack from it. That they go in, foreign countries and things like that, and they will go into a house with guns drawn and take the girls out and turn them into the local embassy or whatnot. And within a week, actually usually within 48 hours, those girls are right back in the hands of the people that were pimping them to begin with. So that is a pointless endeavor. Yeah, they get a lot of publicity from it, and it makes them feel good because they think they did something, but they accomplished nothing. The better approach is to go one person at a time, bring that girl to salvation, and then hopefully be able to get her out, get her clean, and get her deprogrammed.
Mm-hmm. And that's a long-term goal.
Yeah.
That's a long-term goal. And it takes that takes a lot more than one person to do, actually. And the Lord. Takes the Lord.
Faith says, hello, Miss Janice.
Hello.
Becky says, to start an organization, you're going to need some more peeps. Yes, that is absolutely true. We never go out unless I have at least 2 to 3 security personnel other than myself with me, and we have Janice and at least one other girl. Not unless it's a rush thing and then it's just me and Janice, but when that happens, we have to take extra precautions. Yes, she's going to open doors that need to be open. That's true. Yep. And CPS, so to not even know who will help. Now, CPS is corrupt from top to bottom.
Yeah.
I don't deal with CPS, and the few times that I have, I've had to threaten the CPS worker.
I don't call CPS because I don't know. I know that there's good people in there, but I don't know who they are, and so I don't trust. I don't trust to call them. So.
I said, operating in a corrupt system, you have to learn to go outside the system, period. Which hopefully eventually we'll be able to raise the funds and stuff we need to do what our plans are, but it's one day at a time.
But meanwhile, if you're able to now and then, any kind of encounter, any kind of moment to be able to pray, to encourage, if you're able to get the girl out for an hour or two and take her to dinner, take her to coffee, anything, to me, those are victories, and I consider those victories. And I have a different perspective than a lot of people that work in rescue do.
It makes a big difference. Those girls have never been treated properly,
right,
or well, 9 times out of 10. So if you have the funds that you can pay the pimp off or whatever for an hour. Yeah. And then take the girl out to dinner. It doesn't even have to be what most of us would consider fancy. You could take her to a Longhorn or a Waffle House or an Olive Garden or something, and they will think that that is something very special. And a lot of times they'll open up to you more than they have to anybody else because you've actually shown that you cared.
And you get better intel from the victims than you will anywhere else.
Exactly.
You get more intel from them, and they want to talk. They have stories to tell, and no one ever listens to them, and they want to talk.
Exactly. They live a life of silence and forced servitude.
Mm-hmm. So they but that's just, so I consider those little things victories, because they are victories, and it's, it's playing the long game, not the short game.
Exactly. The short game doesn't get you nowhere because it's like I said a minute ago. You can go in and kick in the door and slap pimps around and put guns to their head and take the women out all day, but unless you have a long game in play, as soon as they fall into the judicial system, they're going to be arraigned within 48 hours and they're going to be right back with the pimps.
Mm-hmm. They have a system when they go to jail, whether it's the sex workers or the pimps. There's a whole system that they have. That they're supposed to get each other out within a certain amount of time, and they have their whole underground network. People have no idea there's a whole other world that's going on.
Corrupt judges, politicians, and lawyers.
Yeah, and so they have their own system that they utilize, to get each other out of jail and that kind of thing. So, you have to sort of put aside notions of thinking that, well, let's just call the cops, or let's just do this, or if we could get a girl.
What happened in that last case? They just called the cops and were insistent on that. That girl died.
Which one?
That redhead a couple years ago. AC called us and we had Angel check in on her status. We knew where she was, but they wouldn't. What happened was this girl was drugged and abducted from. Say what?
No names with that.
Yeah. Was drugged and abducted from a nightclub here in the local area. Well, the ones that abducted her were human traffickers, and they had taken her to a local hotel, and they were raping her and beating her and everything else. And the family had contacted a friend of ours who contacted us to see if we could put our feelers out to see if we could locate her. Well, one of the people we had worked with at that point knew where the girl was and told us. And so we relayed the information, asked for them to let us go in and handle the situation. They refused. They wanted to send the local PD instead. All the local PD did was go to the front desk and ask if that girl was there. And as soon as the person that was on the take at the front desk told them no, that girl wasn't there, PD had no more options to use, so they left. And that girl was dependent on insulin, and she died from not having it, and they found her body, what was it, the next day?
It was just a day or two later.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just a day or two later. And so, we heard about that. Basically, the vine, the word on the street. Basically, we heard some of the details about that. But
when you get into this lifestyle, this type of ministry, you're going to have your victories and you're going to have your losses. I'm still infuriated to this day that they wouldn't let us go in and do what we needed to do.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, which is why my main goal with these girls is to minister to their soul, is to make sure that their salvation is intact, because we're all going to die one day or another, and the chances of us getting a girl out, to be completely honest, some do get out, but most of them don't. But if they're saved, if their soul is saved, then they're just freed to a beautiful life with the Lord. And so that is a victory. And if that's where we are right now, I'm good with at least doing that. You know what I'm saying? That's the ultimate victory. And so we just kind of work within the confines of what we have right now. So
work with what we've been given.
Right.
Which is all that you really can do.
Right. They do. There are things in place. There are safe houses. The intake process takes days, usually at these places, and these are really complicated situations. A lot of times there's drugs involved. The girls are. I'll give you another example of something we have. This one girl that has come up a few times. And some others, but just my personal contact with this one girl. But she was being used as basically a beaker, like a chemistry beaker, to produce adrenochrome. I'm assuming to produce something in her body, in her blood, to add to meth, because the same people that were selling her are also selling crystal meth. And so they're using something that they're extracting from her body in rituals. Okay, she's telling me these people are doing rituals. She's like, they're witches. They're doing rituals. I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand, but they're doing rituals. And a lot of people would hear her talk and think, well, she's just kind of lost it, or she's done too many drugs, or she's whatever. But she is telling me things that I know about, that I'm educated about, and so she's saying things that there's no way she knows unless she's experiencing it, right? So basically what they're doing is they're putting her through some sort of torture, and they're able to extract what I'm assuming is adrenochrome or some sort of adrenaline through her adrenalized blood, and mixing it back into the drugs that they're selling on the street, which makes it more addictive. So that gets their customers coming back to them more often, and gets them basically preferred status with the people that are buying the drugs. So she so that's one thing that we have run into, because, like, again, the same people that are running drugs are also selling people, human beings. So let's see. Thank you, Paula. It is heartbreaking. It's very heartbreaking, but God is good. I'll tell you that God is good.
Oh, for the day that God lets me off my leash.
We go back and forth with this, as you can tell, but the Lord really is good. And so so with this particular girl, there's different styles. That one girl who they're mixing the drugs, they're mixing her, whatever they're doing with her blood, into the drugs. That group that is selling her is more of a Nazi flavor, more of a white supremacist type of group. There's also others that are more into like a voodoo or a Haitian type of control. And there's others that are, there's different flavors. And then, of course, you have some of the Hispanic traffickers will be into Santa Muerte. All right, I never say that right, but there's
Santa de Muerte.
That's what it is. But at the core, it's all the same. It's satanic witchcraft control. And it sounds like crazy to say these things, but we're seeing it more. It's extremely prevalent. And the reason it's prevalent is because it's basically easy. I mean, it's not a difficult thing for them to do. You just have to be evil enough to do it. So if you have people that are demonized, and they meet on, around here, they meet on Sundays, and it's called Pimp Church. They literally call it Pimp Church. And they will teach each other and teach the younger pimps and trade secrets on how to do this. So somehow or another, these mind control techniques have gone from the Nazis down to the Bloods and the Crips. And I've talked to some sheriff's departments.
What's missing is the influence of Satanism, the modern pimp game, has come at the hands almost exclusively of the cartels and MS-13 because of Santa de Muerta. Not to mention the covens over the last few years have gotten greedy. They've went from, we're going to create slaves for the Black Awakening to, hey, since we're already doing this, we might as well make some money off of it and put some people that we control in the hands of corrupt politicians, and it gives us more leverage and more power. So I've talked to some former gang members and stuff here in Memphis, doing my line of work and everything else, who have told me of their purchases from these covens. They'll buy a girl or a boy as young as 6 years old from these covens that has been ritualistically programmed. And once they buy the child, they are given everything they need to access the altars and everything else. And then if the child starts to grow up and they start to get a little bit out of line, they can either request how to insert the programming themselves, or they will hand them back over to the covens on a ritual date in order for the them to be reprogrammed.
Right. Sounds crazy, but it's happening in mass numbers. Yep, it's true. See. I don't know. Yeah. Amen. Amen. There's a lot of I will say this though, even though some of the rescue efforts that have been more mainstream and more popularized have holes in the system, I am very encouraged that there's a lot of good people that are working to figure out how to close the gap. And so there really are some good people that are working that have, that really want to see an end to this type of slavery. And
well, we have to learn to approach it the same way that Christ approached things. When he was asked about taxes and what money had to go onto the debt collectors and everything. Christ said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God's what is God's." So we have to understand that just because this is the type of work we do, we don't have to involve the government in any of this. The government's corrupt and they belong to Satan. So we have to be able to draw the line, be willing to draw that line, and completely rely on God and the church in order to create the infrastructure that we need for there to be real rescue work that's done.
Right. And in the end of the day, just like you guys are saying, Paula and Becky, yes, at the end of the day, the Lord, if it's the right timing and the Lord's will, he will make a way where there seems to be no way. He really will. I've seen it happen. I've seen him do it. And by the way, there are the harvest that is coming, that's already beginning, the end time harvest that the Lord has promised us. These people are going to be coming in droves out of this. I don't know how it's going to happen, but the Lord showed me that they're going to be coming out of droves, out of sex trafficking, out of satanic ritual abuse, out of these covens, and a lot of things like that. I mean, I just know that they are.
Well, the church has to be ready, because
exactly,
I can see how it'll happen in America with everything that's going on in stocks and financial markets and everything right now. And we are seeing the full draconian communist measures of those in power. If a pimp is only getting pursued by the elites have a specific appetite. They want young kids, young children. So the current stables that they have aren't going to bring enough in for them to even bother with them, which means they'll either resort to trying to execute them, or they will just cut them loose and send them out to starve to death, pretty much, because there's not going to be any money there. So the church has to be in a position where we are, one, right with God, two, well invested and able to stand alone outside of the government provisions and things like that, homesteads, things of that nature, and have the materials that when these people are put out, we can actually share the gospel and be able to take them in and say, hey, this is how God designed it to be. This is how God said you're supposed to live. And then they'll be able to find salvation and actually find a purpose.
Right, and be able to rehabilitate them. And the church does need to be ready. The church needs to be ready for the people that are coming in, because the people that are coming in as the harvest did not grow up in church. These are people that they're coming in from all kind of places, and the God's going to move in power. I know He will. But the church has got to be ready for what's coming. We got to be ready to know how to better minister to really broken people, and how to assist in rehabilitation for some really broken people.
Well, exactly. And that was one of the main reasons why I feel the Lord had me start this channel and things like that, was to bring Christians that are like-minded together so we can network, associate with each other.
Right.
because there's going to be things that happen in certain parts of the country, and you're not going to be able to stay there, but you might know someone on our list that lives in another state, and you can make your way there, and God has blessed them with provisions and everything needed so that your family will be protected. I know that's what God told me to do. He told me once my job as a watchman was done, my job would be to feed and protect his people. This is something that I take very seriously. So we have to be able to network and know each other.
Right. And if anyone is interested, by the way, in learning how better to minister to in like a counseling situation, to minister to some of these people, there's training courses available. You can private message either me or Jason, and I am looking to put together some groups depending on interest and numbers and that kind of thing to further some training, just to get people, to get the church equipped to know how to to assist in healing.
Well, exactly, and that's one of the main reasons for our ministry right now. With the way things are, it's hard for us to be able to go out because everything's being done online at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to bring people in that are interested in this type of ministry and try and network them with other people that are in their area, or at least tell them how to network, and then help them build their own groups that do this type of work and this type of ministry. We will train you for free.
Mm-hmm.
We will teach you and show you the way that we do things, but we have to have people that are willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. There are people who are willing. I think they're just there's not a lot of understanding on what it means and how to start. But it's actually easy. It's easy. It just means this is, I say this sometimes to my kids and to, all you have to do is die. It's like, it's easy. All you have to do is die. You die to yourself, and you surrender everything to the Lord. And there's a lot of freedom in that. Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm. You can see better than I can. But that's like...
right now it's just comments, not really questions.
Okay. Just make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay.
Well, and this is something that we should start doing on at least a semi-regular basis. Me and you both coming on here.
Okay.
Because other than that, I feel like I'm just some ticked off dude ranting on the internet.
There are solutions. The Lord is moving. He really is moving. There's really good things that he's doing. There's good things coming. This past year, I know for me and Jason, this past year has been a lot of time training, a lot of time equipping, a lot of time of which has been hard for the two of us because we're so used to just go and being on the field. But it has not been time lost. I'll tell you that. We've done a whole lot of training and a whole lot of getting ready for the next thing. And so I think we both feel ready, more prepared to help others be prepared. And we'll just kind of phone tree it, It's
you can ask Janice. She knows how frustrated I get. She knows that I have my days where I'm just like, that's it, screw it. The world's gone to hell in a handbasket. I'm going hunting.
I'm the optimist.
Before we get off here tonight, is there any more specific questions? I know some of y'all had some questions about SRA and our marriage, the way that we operate and stuff like that.
Right.
Last live stream I did. What y'all got?
SRA is a whole other thing. Yes and no.
Stop staring at me, Chief.
Maybe you should tell, because there's probably some people who are not familiar with your testimony. So Jason is a satanic ritual abuse victim, for those who may not know. And that's kind of how we met, in circles and conferences and programs where people who are working in sex trafficking rescue efforts and people who are working in satanic ritual abuse rescue efforts keep finding each other in the same rooms because there's a lot of overlap. It's not 100%, but there's a lot of overlap. And so that's kind of how he and I met to begin with. But as far as yeah, our relationship and how that works, it helps that I'm knowledgeable about it. It helps that I already knew a lot before we got together, and I've just continued to learn more. And obviously, being married, I have learned a lot more. So, how do you deal with Jason's altars if they surface? How do I deal with his altars? Okay, well, Jason's situation is slightly different than some other SRA victims because, as far as we know, when we have not run into any demonic gatekeepers. If there's any there, we haven't run into them yet, and that has to do with his testimony, which is a longer. The short version is that he was in a car wreck in which he had a near-death experience and went to hell. And so the Lord himself got him out of hell. The demons that had possessed him couldn't follow him out of hell. And so when he woke up from this coma, he woke up with no demonic controls, but with only the fractured personality that was left. Normally, when you're dealing with someone who is SRA, normally you're dealing with both. Now we haven't gotten to the bottom of his just yet. He's still in the healing process. So if we come across anything, we'll deal with that when we get there. But what that basically means, as far as like his altars and stuff, is that it doesn't. It's not extraordinarily disruptive. He has a lot of self-awareness. He has a lot of self-control. There have been some occasions. I'll give you a couple of examples. There are. He was talking in his sleep one night and speaking Latin. And so that was most likely an altar that had learned Latin and learned some sort of incantation or ritual or something like that. And how do you deal with that? You pray. You ask the Lord to cover that in prayer. And that was how I dealt with that. And for me, it wasn't as creepy as it might be for someone who's never come across anything like that. I feel pretty battle hardened for a lot of spiritual warfare stuff, just because of my own history and my own past. And this has been, being on the battlefield has been a lifetime excursion for me. And so it's not, it doesn't freak me out or throw me psychologically like it would probably somebody who's not encountered it before. So there have been a couple of things that have been kind of a little more alarming than other things, but we just kind of take it as we go. There's only been most of his altars have either liked me enough or been kind of neutral about me at all. And his altars were programmed with a specific goal in mind, and I didn't have anything to do with it. So I was kind of inconsequential. So they were not really that concerned with me. And once they kind of started to understand that I was helpful to his healing process, then that helped some of the altars. And we did come across one not too terribly long ago that was one that just didn't like me, but
child altar.
It was a child altar that just didn't like me, and that was kind of revealed in some different scenarios. But God's been so good to reveal a few of these things in dream form to me, which has been just a really amazing. I mean, I've never even heard of such a thing, but I don't know any other couples either who are married with one is SRA and the other is not. So our friend group is limited as far as that goes. But
and the one other couple we do know like that, most of the time, the one SRA survivor is the one that talks. The wife really doesn't say too much about the subject.
Yeah. But in that situation where that was revealed to me in a dream, I mean, I knew something was going on, but I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. Jason was just real distant and kind of, off to himself. And when the Lord showed me this young altar and even told me her name and all this stuff, and that she absolutely did not like me. And then once we kind of made this discovery, because Jason has a lot of self-control and is very self-aware, he was able to sort of, he could probably tell you better, but he is able to basically,
deal with it,
deal with her and say, stop that.
Hey, this ain't, no.
Yeah, stop that. But that has something to do with where he is in his own healing process also. There are SRA victims that are not aware that they're SRA at all, or one altar is not aware of the others.
One, most of that has to do with the fact that the initial structure is still in place, the high towers to the demons are still in place, and the demons are still active.
Right. And so that's what makes this situation a little more unique and a little more easy to deal with. So
integrate her, working on it. It's work in progress.
The way they're integrated, Paula, is that they come to know the Lord. So when they come to Christ and when they come to know Jesus themselves for as their personal Savior, that is how they integrate. And they really do integrate because they're not really different people. It's all parts of Him. You know what I'm saying? And so I have been having this close of a relationship with someone who's SRA. I've watched it happen, and it really is amazing to see how it really does come together. Like aspects of this one and that one really do merge. And the Lord is so good to keep the good characteristics of the different ones and kind of toss the bad and keep the good. And God does that. He's awesome. Okay. Yeah, so that is how they are integrated.
So there's been a lot of work done on tearing down the structure that was built in me. So
I will be praying with you. I'll be praying for you. But I will tell you this as encouragement. I hope that this encourages you, is that I have no doubt in my mind that the Lord is using healed SRA victims as a formidable army in His kingdom. I know that more than I know that I'm sitting in this chair. I know that He's doing that because I'm watching it in front of me happen. Because there is nothing more dangerous to the enemy than a healed SRA victim that not only understands who they are in Christ and understands their authority, because you guys know all the secrets. You guys know the other side. And so there's nothing there's no trick that they can pull that you're not aware of. One of the main ways that the enemy has done a lot of damage in the church is
the church's ignorance.
Is ignorance. Because if you don't realize, if you don't know that something's being done, then you don't know how to pray against it. These are fairly, I mean, we have the victory. A Christian who's in right standing with the Lord always has the victory, but you have to apply it. You have to go on the battlefield. You have to actually cast out these things and make war and take the victory. You have to take the ground. It requires action on your part.
Well, exactly. The problem is that the church wants to relax and act like they're on a cruise ship. This isn't a cruise ship. This isn't a vacation. The moment you said, Christ, I accept you as my Lord and Savior, you were expected to suit up, put your battle gear on, and go to war. And Christians aren't doing that. And to answer your question, Becky, do I have problems with astral projection like others coming to harm me? Yeah, that's been a pretty reoccurring thing the thing about it is the covens that have been after me have come to realize that I know what I'm doing. Janice knows what she's doing, and we are strong in the Lord and understand spiritual warfare. So for them to come anywhere near us is for them to risk being bound spiritually and no longer being able to operate the way they operate. So they've made it a point to stay far away at this point. Whether or not it'll stay that way with the way the nation's going and the covens are, I don't know. Because I think we're going to see a major resurgence in occult activity over the next couple of months in order for them to push it to the final stages where they can have their Luciferian communistic revolution. And at that point, the spiritual warfare will also become physical warfare, and it'll be intertwined.
But it's high time for the church to take their place, and stand in operate from a position of victory, and to take courage. For far too long, Christians have been wigged out and scared, and like for one way or another, they get really weird and paranoid talking about supernatural things or paranormal activity or any of that, or
which is the reason why the world's in the current state that it's in,
or demonic activity or that kind of thing. And there's absolutely no reason for a real Christian to be afraid. And that's why the Lord commands us to take courage. He commands us to be courageous. He doesn't ask. He expects us to be courageous.
There's a reason why the Lord has disdain for cowards.
And there's really nothing to be afraid of. The only thing they can take is your life, and then they're only setting you free, and so there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, it's been my personal experience with the Lord that it's walking a fine line. When he says the path is narrow, he means exactly that. The path is narrow. This hyper grace nonsense of, when I get up out of bed and my feet hit the floor, the devil shakes. That's a load of garbage. One, the devil's not afraid of you. He's afraid of Christ. He's afraid of your relationship with Christ. So one, you have to remove your own ego. Go on somewhere. But once your ego is out of the way and your sole focus is Christ, you can operate in the power and authority that Christ gave and actually do what is appropriate. You're an attention whore. I want you to know this.
The dogs are good therapy for Jason.
Oh yeah.
As a matter of fact, just as a side note, I've said for years that as far as the rescue efforts, if there is a way to combine dog rescue or any kind of animal rescue and sex trafficking rescue or SRA rescue, that would be ideal. The Lord can do it. There's a whole lot of red tape. Every time we have actually put pen to paper and tried to make it happen, it seems like it's impossible.
That's why you go outside the government.
Yeah.
If you buy a house and don't list it as a rehabilitation center, the government ain't going to bother you.
Yeah.
That's when you go out to the country and do it far away from major cities. Because the government has no business being involved in it. How to see the ones that come to destroy the church. There's a lot of dead giveaways.
Yeah.
There was a book, unfortunately the author has passed away, I think the year before last maybe, but her name's Dr. Rebecca Brown. She wrote a book called He Came to Set the Captives Free. And what it is, it's her testimony of rescue she did for a SRA victim who was actually one of Satan's high priestesses here in America. And so you get a really good in-depth view of that world, but she also writes out a clear list of how Satanists infiltrate the church, what to look for, how to tell what's going on. And a lot of it does have to do with spiritual discernment, but there's certain moves, strategic moves they make in order to have seats of authority and power within the congregation.
Some of the giveaways are they will try to get into a place of position. They try to immediately saddle up to people of influence, like the pastor or any kind of leader, someone that they think has influence. They will give gifts. This is
that have been ritualized,
almost across.
And demonized.
Yeah, this is very common. They'll get, and it can be anything. It can be anything from a coffee cup to a pen to a Bible. Food. They'll give gifts, and people.
They'll make large monetary donations.
Yes, in order to gain influence, and they always try to get a key to the church. So even if they are simply cleaning the church or some sort of janitorial position or something like that,
they still have access, and they will perform rituals and things there to corrupt the church.
Right. So those are some of the dead giveaways. Some that are a little more sophisticated in their tactics may not be as obvious, but there are a lot there. The sad thing is that they've come in and been pretty obvious for a lot of years, and the church is still not seeing it.
That's because the church is stupid.
They're not stupid. They're naive. There's a difference.
They're hyper grace stupid people.
There's a difference. I have to get accent to say, "Hey, Ginger." She's cute.
Hola.
But yeah, that's some of the. I'm trying to think of some of the more sophisticated ways that they might come in and do things. I will tell you, in a church that I was formerly in. Oh, here's a good one. One of the church that I was formerly a member of, one of the ways that this one guy had influence is that when he would pray for people, people saw him as sort of a prophet, because when he prayed for people, he would just read their mail. He would get these words of knowledge that were so spot on and so on target that people would just think, "Whoa, he's got a pipeline to God." And every now and then he would be so off, or it would be something so weird or bizarre, but he came off as kind of an odd person. And so people would, and me included, would tend to sort of blow him off as maybe even kind of on the spectrum, or maybe Asperger's or something like that, because he just came across as odd. And then it was revealed later on that he was actually operating in witchcraft, and that is how he was getting those spot on words of knowledge and that kind of thing. So that kind of thing is going to be in this coming, the great deception that is coming alongside of the harvest. That is going to, I suspect, be very, very big, and that the false signs and wonders.
We've watched that happen just over the last 4 years with the Trump thing and the Trump prophecies. We've watched so many false prophets spew their vomit over the church, and people just fall in line with it. You're like, Trump's going to come back. No, he's not. Shut up. But so you've watched that happen. I believe that most of these so-called pastors and stuff, now some of them are just sincerely wrong. They got their personal emotions mixed up with the prophetic. That happens. But some of them, such as Kenneth Copeland and people like that, they straight belong to the covens, and their entire purpose is to deceive and make monetary gain off of it. So we have to be, as a church, spiritually discerning. We have to be able to see what's what, and we have to take these people and question everything that they're saying. How do you know if a prophecy is a prophecy? Well, it's very simple. You take it to God in prayer. and you ask him, God, is this person legitimate or are they lying? Because, there's several times in scripture, Old and New Testament, where God straight calls out the false prophets and says that their words are nothing, and he has disdain for them. So that's something you got to be very, very cautious with. That's the reason why, even though God has given me prophetic dreams and visions, you guys don't hear me speak on them unless it's something that I know for a fact that I am watching come and taking place. Janice knows how often I have dreams and visions, but I do not speak on them for that reason. I never want to be the guy that made the mistake of saying, oh, God showed me this in a dream, and it turns out that I ate some nachos that didn't agree with me.
Right.
Because that can happen.
Right. But mostly people in general are so desperate for hope. They're so desperate for
Hopium. It's a drug.
You're right. You're right. It is hopium. That's a good way to put it. But they're so wanting good news that they tend to cling on to any good news, even if it's unlikely. However, this is what the Lord's going to use to teach the church finally, that to cling to Him and to look to Him for answers and to look for His return. And
the church has a lot of ground to make up. I mean, as a Satanist, you're taught from day one that this is a war, and you're taught how to overcome your enemy. And it's very easy 9 times out of 10 because most Christians are ignorant. And the ones that aren't ignorant are just stupid. And the reason why me and Janice have our differences on me saying that, the reason why I say stupid is because the way I see it, we live in an age of information. There are multiple authors who have written multiple books on the subject of the occult from a Christian perspective. Multiple people who have been delivered from the occult and demons who have written books on it saying this is how the enemy works, this is stuff you need to know, and people refuse to read it. They want to lie in their ignorance, and that to me is the very definition of stupidity.
But I know that people are coming along in their time, and if you don't
She's
know,
more patient than me.
I am more patient. But if if they will, if you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know how to, build a rocket, and it wouldn't occur to me to buy a book on how to build a rocket if I didn't know that I needed to build a rocket. So people are coming along, and the Lord's showing, and he'll do that. And he's bringing people into and not everybody's called to the same kind of ministry. And that's
no, they're not. They're not. And that's perfectly fine. Like I said, if that's not the field that someone's called to, some people are called to healing. Some people are called to prophecy.
Right.
Not me.
but the basic tenets of Christianity, which is putting your trust in the Lord and not in anything else or any government system or a man or a person or a pastor or anything, putting your trust in Jesus Christ alone, that's the main basic tenet of Christianity. And that's the thing that we've got to get right. And we haven't very well up to date, but this is the kind of atmosphere and culture where it's now required.
Well, Paula, that's a good point. Matrix has you. That's also a good point. People don't want to accept reality for what it is, so they stay addicted to hopium so they can have this continued release of endorphins, even though they're believing in a lie. And we see that a lot in trafficking. You see that a lot in SRA victims and everything else. They want to believe. I still struggle with this sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to accept the fact that what happened to me happened to me. I just want to go on la-di-da-di-da, but I have to realize I can't do that. I have to be able to take all the knowledge that I have and what was done to me and use it to benefit Christ and his kingdom. I was having an interesting conversation with a friend of mine online the other day, and they were of the stance that Christians shouldn't be involved in conspiracy theories. First off, the term conspiracy theory is a psyop term to push you away from actually seeking the truth. to be a Christian is to seek truth and to know truth. We have to operate in the spirit of truth and wisdom. We have to operate in Christ. So to seek truth in turn is seeking Christ, but we can't afford to be ignorant of the world. It says we are to be as wise as a serpent. That means we have to know the enemy inside and out, whether that is Satan and his fallen angels, whether that is the covens and how they operate, or whether that is our own government and their systems of corruption. We have to know these things because we have to be able to recognize their lies and understand God's truth at the same time. You're pathetic, Chief. I love you, but you're pathetic.
He's good, though.
Give me the stare down. All right, guys, we've been going for an hour and a half. If there's not any more pressing questions that you guys want to pop off real quick, we are going to cut it loose here in about 5 minutes because I don't think very many people are going to watch an hour and a half long video. Unfortunately, your average person has the attention span of a goldfish. So, any of you guys got any last second questions or anything you need to know?
You're very welcome. Sometimes it's hard for us to know exactly what to say without questions because these are really broad topics. There's a lot of ground to cover.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes like very specific. But if anybody is interested in doing like more specific training, private message either of us. And if it's not something that we have a direct line to, we can
find it.
We can find it and we can point you to it. And if anybody is interested in actually forming any rescue groups, we can help do that as well. So you can message us about that also, or just specific questions.
Yep, and it's just like update as far as ASOC goes. My actual security company's channel, it is up. However, it's lacking in content right now because our schedules have been so hectic. I really haven't had time to really upload anything or make any of the videos that I want to make. Hopefully, I will have that solved tomorrow. But in the meantime, any questions about security or any sort of things like that, you can just shoot them to the archangel22@protonmail.com email. And we can just go from there.
You guys are very welcome. We're so willing to be servants of the Lord and to put ourselves available at any place where we can be of use. So reach out and we'll be glad to help any way we can. Love you guys.
We will see you guys on the next one. Good night.
Night.